I'd like to call this meeting to order. Thank you for coming out. There has been a change to our agenda. Kathy Geist is going to be giving us a report under the Commission Report section concerning the Mason County Transit groundbreaking ceremony, and so we're going to add her at this time. But first, we're going to stand, please, and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Kathy Geist, would you like to come up? You're first.
You bet. Good afternoon, Mayor Kranz, Commissioner Olson, Commissioner Pennell. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Steve, for inviting me. I'm here. I'm very excited. We have a little project that I'm not sure if everybody knows about down. You can see it from here. We're going to be doing a transit community center. We have our groundbreaking in August 1st. We're on a 14-month schedule so far with rose-colored glasses to be doing our ribbon cutting in early fall of August 2014. And I'd like to, my purpose for being here tonight is to formally invite the commission to come and celebrate this wonderful event with us, and I have an invitation for you. And we also wanted to take the time to thank city staff, community development specifically, and public works and engineering, and working with us on this project. They've been a great help. We still have a lot of work to do, and we're prepared to do that. And city staff has been very helpful and informative all along the way, and very supportive of our staff. So it's been very pleasant so far. So we'd like to really thank them for doing that and helping us with all of it, and really going out of their way to be helpful with us on this project. So thank you very much. Here's your invitation. I'll answer questions.
Are you going to talk about the picture and whatnot over there?
So behind Dave, we have a artist rendering of the front part of the building. So that view would be from Safeway's parking lot. If you're looking at the front of the building, on the left-hand side is what the new building is going to look like, the shell outside what is already there. That building is staying, and that's the base building of the armory as it is today. That shell is going to go around the outside. We'll have 4 separate retail spaces, or one big retail space. It's sort of a empty pallet right now, so it just depends on who we have come in. To the right-hand side, I'll just step over here. As you come over to the right over here, is what you're looking at there is the atrium. And that looks like this from the street. And so what that is it's a 30-foot wide, it has a glass roof, 30-foot wide, open on either end, pass-through from Franklin Street to actually Railroad Avenue. Transit bought the property on the other side of the alley as well, and our long-term is hoping to sort of make a path so it's very easy for people to get off the bus, walk through the atrium, and get out to Railroad Avenue without going all the way around and come straight through. And so this is a really nice area that we hope to have events in. And my dream is that possibly the farmers market might want to move there or grow to there, which would allow them to then stay open more months out of the year, somewhat like Olympia, because they have coverage. This area also has gates that come down on either end to secure it for private events. So at night we could see that, we see that happening. We see them sort of doing an al fresco out of the other end of the armory, where we're going to have big sets of about 15-foot doors that open out into this atrium, so we can see people having events and using both space. We'll have a kitchen. There's a lot to talk about, but I'm sure that's not what I'm supposed to be here doing today. So anybody that wants to see the plans, we finally got a set of plans that I think are final, and I'd be happy to show them to anybody and meet with anybody at any time and go over it, because I love to talk about it. So it's very exciting. So yeah, any questions? Any more questions?
I thank you for this invitation. Are we all going to share this one, or did you have 3 separates?
Yeah.
We'll make a copy of it, right? With colored ink in it.
I can say copy.
I have one on my desk right now, so I'm planning to attend that on August 1st. So
Yeah. So,
great.
Yeah. And we'll have hard hats for you when you get there, if you want to come down and take a tour.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Kathy. We appreciate that. Next is our commission reports, and Commissioner Pennell.
I will be attending the chamber event on Thursday at the Green Diamond Recreational Center. That's my report.
Commissioner Olson there.
Following up with Kathy, I have an MTA meeting tomorrow night, and then I will be taking off on a little vacation, so I will not be at next week's meeting. And then I had a follow-up comment. Last week I attended the community Lifeline community meeting, and they were really happy about the city's decision to form the task force, and got lots of nice comments about that, and very enthusiastic. So I think it's going to be a great effort on our part to pull that together. So that's my report.
Very good. And I have no scheduled city board meetings this week. So that concludes our reports. Next is the general public comment period. So we have some people that have signed in, and they're coming to talk to us. We appreciate public comment. And so, is that Bernice? We want to come up and talk to us about what you would like to talk to us about?
We actually came here to talk about the old Cameron Hotel downtown on the 303 South 2nd Street. The big brick building that's on the top 10 buildings in Mason County to demolish. The building was built in actually 1927. It used to be a hotel that was 3 stories, and it was quite a beautiful hotel from what I understand and looking at the pictures in downtown. We've been working with Skip McConkey, who's the owner of the building, trying to help him clean that building up. The goal is to actually restore that building into what it once was and make it sort of like a crafter's mall. Wanted to kind of give an update of what we've done with just a very small group of people over the last couple of weeks since June 24th, I think was the abatement hearing. Since June 24th, we've taken out over 3,000 pounds of garbage out of that place. We've chained the doors and the gates, mowed the lawn, tacked the roof down, had a lot of people in the community that have given us really positive feedback, from the volunteers to wanting to help clean it up, to the auto shop across the street, who this week is going to lend us their water and pressure so we can pressure wash the building, and actually offered to help us clean some of the furniture left in there. So anybody we've talked to have had very positive comments. You know, we don't know yet what the structural assessment will be. I'll guarantee you that. We have no clue. The first goal is to clean it up, and I can tell you there's been nobody in there since we started. We're down there at least a couple times a day. Somebody's down there. Their beds are out, their clothes are out, their food is out. The garbage doesn't stink from the outside anymore. So we probably put in just 8 of us, probably about 300 hours in so far. And so I think we've accomplished a huge amount. The first day we went in there, we asked the police officers to go in and make sure nobody was in there. They saw what it looked like the first day. They were down there last week and said they couldn't believe the difference inside. It didn't look like the same place. So you can't tell a lot from the outside, but there's been a huge amount of work going on the inside. So just wanted to let you guys know and take that into consideration. I know on the July 2nd, he had 30 days to respond. And I know they wanted to rip it down, but we just wanted to make our case for a building that we think could be great for the community.
Okay, and you actually, I believe is Nathan, or?
I'm Nathan.
Yeah, and so you kind of get 3 minutes each, and so you were talking to me earlier today, and you asked what you could do, and I said, come and tell us what you're doing, so you got 3 minutes too, so let me start you off here just a second.
My whole goal with this place is, well, they did an article in the newspaper about it, some of you might read it, and since that article's been in the paper, I've had roughly 30 or 40 people from ages 16 to probably 50 that will give all their time, or not all their time, volunteer equipment from their houses. I mean, the auto shop said we can use any equipment that they have. There's a lot of people that want this building back. I mean, I don't
We know
really-
it's a huge job. It may be impossible. We don't know if we'll fail, but we would like to try.
All right. I appreciate you coming tonight and sharing that with us. I am one that, along with my fellow commissioners, very concerned with vacant houses, vacant buildings, and having them boarded up and secured. I mean, I've said that about 100 times, whatever. We got to at least board up. Before we do anything, we got to board these things up, make them so people can't get into them. It's been on the list, and I don't know how that process really goes from here, but I thank you for at least cleaning up and boarding up the building, and all the next steps would have to be done through the building department and the codes and whatnot, if there was a chance to take that off the list. And again, this is new, because we just put them all on the list, so now what would happen if one came off? I think working with our building department would be, the next question on, okay, what would we do? And so, Mr. Goins, do you know what the process would be for them?
In terms of the abatement process, the hearings examiner has issued a decision. It's under the appeal period currently, so there's no action being taken by the city specifically. Our main objective, I think, is one you're already meeting, is to clean up the site and make it more positive, secure the site. In terms of how the building can be reused, there is the question of the structural integrity of the building, and I think we'd be very interested in seeing how that could how that would look, and whether the building is something that could be salvaged, or what that site's alternatives are. There are concerns about the cost of bringing that building back and triggering other regulatory requirements, the federal requirements for buildings and structures in flood zone areas, sort of tie our hands in terms of things we can and can't do. So there's a lot of questions that are unanswered at this point.
And we know that.
All right, we thank you for coming out and telling us
Thank you.
that. Appreciate it. Mr. Davis, did you want to speak at this time?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
All right, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Tom Davis, 170 West Bushy Road. Some really good things are happening, and they're happening basically because you folks have started them happening. People step up when they see our leaders stepping up and addressing some of the concerns in the community. It's amazing the amount of energy that comes right behind those decisions. Some of them will turn out to be unrealistic, some of them will turn out to be substantial, but they all come to the table, and they all come with considerations and problems, and they all come with solutions. So I just wanted to commend and congratulate the board here for stepping forward and taking a look at some of these concerns that have lingered in the community's minds for such a long time, that we now seem to be looking forward and actually taking a proactive stand. It gives me a sense of pride. It gives the folks I know a sense of pride, and it just brings forth a level of enthusiasm that heretofore hasn't been in the neighborhood as far as my experience is. So I appreciate that, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. All right. Next on the agenda is what we call item number E, and that's our consent agenda. Have my fellow commissioners had ample time to review the material before them in the consent agenda? Could we please have a reading of the consent agenda?
Thank you. Consent agenda, item number 1, D Manor Lease Agreement. Number 2, Resolution number 1052-0713, a resolution of the City of Shelton superseding Resolution number 902-1006, relating to the policy and allocation of lodging tax revenues. Number 3, payroll warrants numbered 69546 through 69732 in the amount of $618,677.88. Number 4, transfers and direct banking fees and charges, approval in the amount of $10,155.08. Number 5, vouchers number 81304 through 81446 in the amount of $387,633.33.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. There is no old business at this time, but there is some new business, and we have Mr. Steve Goins, our Director of Community and Economic Development, that's going to present a little briefing on our sewer comprehensive plan update.
I'm going to make a bunch of noise here, I'm afraid. I'll try to do this from here. What I wanted to provide you is some details about our sewer comprehensive plan, which is currently under review. In the briefing report, I mentioned that I'd try to give you some details. It's a rather voluminous document here that you may not want to particularly read page by page, but I thought I'd at least give you a chance to understand what's contained in here and an opportunity for questions about that. We have been in this process for nearly 4 years. This has been a long endeavor. We started this, I believe, in 2009, and much of the data that's contained in the document is based on 2010 data, which may seem a little stale, but the purpose was we had to move forward from a baseline, and to go backwards and recreate that baseline would have, I think, made this more costly and more timely to complete. So we utilized the 2010 data, and that's what the plan is based upon. As you're aware, the sewer treatment plant was upgraded during that process, so the plan does sort of come current in some of these types of discussions about what's going on with the plant and some of the other activities that have occurred over that time. But the plan is out for review. It's been dispersed pretty broadly. In addition to legal ads in the Journal, we've got a copy of this in hard paper form at the counter up here in the Public Works Community Development Office, at the library. We've dispersed this to a number of state and federal agencies, as well as a lot of local interests that would want to comment or perhaps comment. We hand-delivered versions to the local tribes, Squaxin Island Tribe and Squamish as well, and just tried to be proactive in getting folks an opportunity to comment on the plan. The comment period ends on April 3rd. And just kind of giving you an overview here. Chapter 1 sort of provides a organization of the plan, describes some of the components of our wastewater system, spends a little time discussing our regional partnership, and that's, I think, important because that led to a great deal of the work that was done over the past 10 or 12 years, planning work and then physical construction. It does list a lot of these other documents that were completed over time, and elements of this plan were updated over a 15-year period, but there was a course in time where Shelton never really reestablished a comprehensive plan for the entire system, and so we've kind of went back to that approach here. We're not simply discussing how to provide wastewater treatment improvements that would serve our regional partners. This is entire service area is being contemplated here, which is now the urban growth area for Shelton. The plan briefly describes our approval process, which we're in the midst of now. We'll get state agency comments and other comments and come back for a authorization on this plan. There's a table in Chapter 1 that's kind of an important table because it describes all of the elements this plan is required to contain. And we describe where those are, and if you want to see where a specific element is, there's a table that can quickly refer you to that. And there's a graphic in here that describes the current service areas, and the plan goes on to describe how that's changing in the 6-year and then 20-year horizon. Chapter 2 describes the current and future service areas. Our current service area is simply the city limits. The plan wants to contemplate this growth and anticipate serving the UGA. This is meeting growth management plan objectives for concurrency in service. We describe how we're going to do that. Currently, the city has 8 service basins. We have to expand on that significantly to accomplish that. It describes some of the natural features that are in the area, some of the other elements that affect our ability to treat sewage, and in the past, as you're aware, we've had a significant issue with I&I, inflow and intrusion in our system, and that's in part results from when you have high rainfall incidents, you are getting a lot of groundwater, and that affects how the system operates, affects how the system functions. This portion of the plan describes some policies and regulations that we need to adhere to, and it describes the growth basin by basin. And that might be something worth taking a little time and looking at and reviewing. Let's see here. This is one of the graphics that's in this chapter. This shows in the green the areas that are currently served by our systems. You'll see there's some areas that are outside the UGA, the portions of the State Patrol land which borders the port of Shelton Sanderson Field, and the corrections facility to the far west. The gold is what's contained in the future service area. And with the exception of the areas around Island Lake, as you can see, we've tried to provide a system that will accommodate growth that would come over 20 years into these areas. We recognize that eventually Island Lake and those other surrounding areas may need the city to provide them with a sewer system, but we didn't plan that in the next 20-year horizon. If there's water quality issues or other things that arise, we'll need to adjust the plan accordingly, but for the sake of completing this document, we didn't anticipate that portion of the UGA would need sewer service in the next 20-year horizon, but it does contemplate significant growth, particularly on the Sheldon Hill site to the west. This graphic shows land uses in the urban growth area, and this is important because it helps us understand the level of intensity we think the systems would need to serve. Our current city limits include about 2,400 acres of residential, about 780 acres of commercial, and 156 acres of industrial. This would be changing that considerably under this new plan. There'd be roughly 4,100 acres of residential, almost 1,100 acres of commercial, and almost 3,000 acres of industrial, and a lot of that, of course, is the industrial lands in Sanderson Field and Johns Prairie, as well as about 700 acres of public lands. Some of that may not need sewer service, such as our watershed property, but all of those are contemplated in the service area. Chapter 3 describes the flow and loading characteristics of our system. It projects what those will be over the 20-year horizon. I won't go into this to a lot of detail, but we needed to have some way of trying to capture what kind of problems we still have with I&I, what kind of expansion we need with the basins to accommodate this growth. And with those land uses, we coupled the projections with what we've completed with our water system plan and our traffic analysis for when we did our traffic model. We assigned these land uses, we assigned certain assumptions to how many trips those uses would generate, and those like uses are built into these other plans, including the sewer plan, so these plans have a consistency in terms of what those growth expectations are. Chapter 4 describes the collection system, including the pump stations, collection system infrastructure, gets in sort of the nuts and bolts of what we have in our system. We don't have a great deal of pump stations. There's other cities that have 30, 40, 50 pump stations. We have 2 major stations and 3 minor systems. But it describes those in more detail to help us understand where our investments need to go moving forward. Chapter 5 gives us some recommendations on that system. We provided a model to predict future flows, which we tried to complete as efficiently as possible. Instead of trying to map out every pipe in the system and analyzing how much flow might be going through those, we basically built a skeletal system where we took the major lines and we analyzed based on land areas and uses how much flow is likely going through those. We didn't have flow data, but we had projections based on some other data we could collect. And knowing what those uses would likely generate from ERUs and other things, we built this model. And that model's helping us to plan for the future. We did do some ground verification in certain areas where the model was telling us flows are rather high. We went out and tried to verify whether that was the case or not, and by and large the model seemed to be matching up with what we're finding in the field. So we completed this capacity analysis, and the collection system capacity is a significant part of your capital facilities plan, which I'll talk about in a minute. We have a plan for these feature basins, which we need to accommodate this larger service area. We discussed the future collection system I&I removal plan. And in a nutshell, what we have proposed is to move away from this large basin project approach that Shelton has taken in the past. We included Basin 3 in the plan with the assumption that we would receive grant funding to secure funding for that particular project. We identified basins 4 and 6, at least portions of those basins, would likely need some sort of upgrades in the near term. What we included in the budget, if you will, for this utility is to increase our investment in repairs in those systems that we would do internally. We would identify areas where we think there's, hot spots, if you will, try to fix the worst cases in the system, and the plan describes some reports and studies that would need to be done in advance of that work. I think the first year we anticipated that coming forward is, I think, 2016. So we have a few years of getting those reports and studies in place before we start to attack those hot spots. And we also anticipated that would likely be the time frame that we would try to find the money to complete Basin 3, and we'd be pretty busy on that project. So this is something that we've discussed with Ecology. We believe they're comfortable with this approach, and I think we can stabilize our costs a little more by having this annual maintenance, if you will, of our system that would just occur over time. The plan also describes a repair and inspection and repair plan for our force main. Other studies that were completed in the past identified the force main as a concern. The force main is in good shape, and we don't have any reason to believe it would have a failure at this time. But we have limited means to inspect it to make sure that's the case over the long haul. And we wanted to ensure that in the event there was a significant catastrophe that affected that force main, that we would be able to respond. If the force main was to fail, there's really no other way to direct sewage to the treatment plant. So we wanted to have the parts and pieces that we would need to work around a problem area and be able to identify where a problem area might lie through this inspection process. So the plan describes how we would achieve that.
So Steve, the force main is the thing that is the sewer line that goes from from either the 2 pump stations and then goes around to the plant from there.
The force main specifically starts at the Front Street pump station and runs across the Simpson frontage along Front. The Neelan Park pump station feeds into that same force main, and it's directing effluent all the way out to the treatment plant from that point. It's well over a mile. This map, I know this is hard to see. This describes some of the areas where there is existing collection system improvements that are identified in the plan. it's really hard to see those numbers, but you can likely identify that line that's running parallel to Olympic Highway North. There's a long stretch of red there in Mountain View, and it goes all the way up to Wallace Nealon there. That trunk line is nearing capacity, and we believe in the near term needs to be upsized. We've identified this and discussed this with Shelton Hills, who, as part of their phase one, their project would feed into this line and would exacerbate that concern. And we will be discussing this in part of our development agreement with Hall Equities, but it's included in the plan and the cost for dealing with that. There's some other shorter pieces here, and you can see those numbering on there. And from a cost standpoint, these are relatively small projects, but three of them three of the smaller projects are identified as ones that we likely would entertain over the next 6 years, short-term projects. Some of the other smaller projects there are in blue, are likely ones that would be beyond our 6-year horizon, and we would monitor those to see how they're working. Some of the I&I fixes that we've already completed have helped to stave off the need to do some of these capacity improvements, because we were only seeing surcharging during these high rain incidents or other types of incidents where we had rainfall over a long period of time. And there's less of this I&I coming into the system, so we think we can live with these fixes being delayed for a little longer. This graphic shows our existing basins as well as these future basins that we would serve in the UGA. They're colored because they identify which plant facility would likely service those areas. You see the downtown area, the Mountain View, and basically what's in the city limits now is that kind of salmon pink colored. We anticipate that would continue to be served by the downtown plant. The areas in green, some of which are already served by our satellite facility, would likely continue to be served by the satellite facility. The area in blue up in the northeast quadrant would likely be served by a third facility that the plan identified building sort of in the latter half of the 20-year horizon. And this would be, I think, driven by when funding's available, when there's additional demand to accommodate growth in that area, and we would anticipate this serving the Johns Prairie Industrial Park as well as these other lands that could be developed. What the plan identified was even with the plant upgrades we completed and the ability to have these phased improvements of the satellite plant, there's not enough capacity between those two plants to serve the entire UGA. So the plan identified this area we call it the Johns Prairie satellite, but the plan doesn't identify exactly where it would go, but it would serve that blue area there to the northeast. We describe in a little detail the ability of sort of moving effluent to different facilities depending on circumstances, and as you're aware, we secured some funding to do just that in the area that's on the most easterly portion of the Shelton Hills development. Through a diverter box, we can send effluent either to the satellite plant or the downtown plant, depending on the needs or if there's a plant issue. There will be a pump station, and the pointer doesn't work here, but if you can see the Shelton Hills site, it's that large, mainly green area. The most southern portion is in the pink, but it's called 7A on that map there. Centrally located in 7A would be another pump station. That pump station would primarily serve the business park and Shelton Hills development. But we have the ability to send by gravity effluent from other areas through this diverter box if we wanted to serve those areas by sending the effluent from the pump station up to the satellite. We'd be able to do that. And in turn, we could divert flows from the satellite plant, if there was a problem with the satellite plant, through this diverter box down to the downtown plant to allow that, if there was a need to fix something or there was some problem that we needed to address, to be able on a short-term basis to do that. We envision a similar process where those the the existing pink basin and the blue basins would meet there, that those lines are rather fuzzy, that we can shift how that effluent is served based on having this diverter box and having the ability to kind of maneuver around. That basin's also has a fair amount of geographic barriers. Canyon Creek runs through the southern portion of that, and it's a significant geographic barrier providing gravity flows to the south. So the plan doesn't completely address how that would work, but it identifies that as a likely coming downtown. You can see the existing portion of Capitol Hill is in the pink right now, and how far that basin ultimately extends up there is something that we could work out in some details through a following report. Chapter 6 just briefly describes our treatment system inventory, and it goes into some detail on what the components of our newly upgraded downtown plant are, as well as the satellite plant. As you're likely aware, the satellite plant is designed so that 2 additional phases of equal size could be added to that facility. It currently treats about 400,000 gallons a day, and with these phased expansions, it can go up to 1.2 million gallons. So those details are described in Chapter 6. I won't go into a lot of detail on that. I think you've gotten a lot of education on our systems over the course of time.
Just for, how many chapters are there?
There's 9.
9, okay, I was just curious, I was just wondering about how far we were through the presentation. Not that I'm bored with what you're saying, it's just, I was just curious, so that everyone could...
My goal was to save you time here.
You're doing very well, you really are.
So the Chapter 7 describes these facilities and what could be done over the next 20 years to improve those. And by and large, the satellite plant, the die is cast. We anticipated this phase development, and that's exactly what would occur. The downtown plan has a similar description. It's not likely that we could get permits to treat more than we are with the plan as it's currently designed, but it has a fair amount of capacity built into it. But this identifies again the need, if we're really going to serve this entire UGA, a third plant will be necessary, and the Johns Prairie area is the likely place that would be. Again, this shows those basin configurations, similar graphic to what you just looked at, and again shows that blue area, which would likely be where that third plant would be serving. I have a handout here for this portion. I thought you'd want to see this. This is sort of the meat and potatoes of the whole plan. This is the capital facility plan, and I've got a lot of cryptic descriptions here on the slide, but what I handed you gives you some detail into what these projects are. And the first project there, RR1, is Basin 3, and the basin is described in 2 different ways in the analysis. We have a pretty good estimate from our design engineers as to what this project would cost. We also have this description of cost based on this analysis done by Corolla engineers that was incorporated into the plan. That was identified as the #1 project, and we're in the process of trying to secure grant funding for that project. RR2 is basins 4 and 6. As I described in that case, we anticipated building in a maintenance fund, if you will, or adding maintenance dollars into our operations to complete minor projects over the course of time. The other basins, because of their age, may not be as contributing. Am I ringing a lot up here? Is that better?
Yeah.
You like that?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. And then we have these trunk line projects, and I described some of these in some detail, but this gives you a little more detail on those. That the main trunk line is that number 1 trunk line that goes from Washington Street here to the Wallace Nealon, from Wallace Nealon to B Street is really how that should be described. That's a $1.4 million effort to upsize that line. That will in part be driven by the need to accommodate Shelton Hill, so we'll be discussing how to share those costs. Trunk line 2 is on Birch Street from B to 12th. Again, that's a pretty small project. Trunk line 3 is from Olympic Highway South, running parallel from 13th to 12th, a very small segment. Trunk line 4 is parallel to Railroad Avenue between 4th and 6th. Trunk line 5 is west of there. It's along 12th Street between Franklin Street and the alley to the south. Very small project. Trunk line 6 is along Harvard between 3rd Street and Pioneer. Again, a pretty small project, relatively speaking. And then there's the pump station improvements. They're described in the plan. And the consultants identified that at the end of the growth horizon, it's likely that the Front Street pump station would no longer be large enough to serve the area that would be demanded by particularly Shelton Hills growth and other areas that would develop out over that 20-year horizon. We'd likely need to do some upsizing to that plant, maybe another pump or some other means. It doesn't go into the details of how you achieve that. It just identified that the capacity would be reached before you get to the 20-year horizon. And the plan describes these other studies and reports that would be complementing these other efforts, such as the ability to identify where in basins 4 and 6 you would want to do these maintenance projects. Coming up with a plan to deal with the force main repair and inspection. Those kind of things are funded in the plan as well. Chapter 9 is the financial chapter. This is the final chapter. It describes the budget of the utility, describes the policies that it's operating within and its ability to manage its debt, has some figures to so you can compare what has happened in the past in terms of its finances and where we're going. Funding strategies, we've discussed some of these at length when we were doing our rate analysis. Our need for increased revenue, as we identified earlier this year, and the current projected rates. The same table that we shared with in the past is in there now. It describes this need for an additional rate hike in the near term and sort of a leveling out beyond that for a 6-year horizon. It doesn't go beyond that point. The last thing it describes, well, I shouldn't say the last one I wanted to point out is this change in our general facility charges. That's on, I believe it's page 912. There's an analysis done that describes our debt, it builds in the infrastructure that we need to build over this 20-year horizon to make the plan work, and how much connections that would be. And there's a lot of complicated math that goes into coming up with a number, but in the final analysis, it recommends that we reduce our general facility charge for the sewer utility down to $5,973. We believe that's mainly due to the lower cost, if you will, of these larger capital projects over this 20-year horizon than we've had in the past, and our ability to secure grant funding has helped the city as well in being able to reduce those costs. So as folks connect to the system, those $6,000 would add up to a lot of reductions in what the city needs to come up with to build these capital facilities. That's the plan in a nutshell.
All right. Questions? Comments?
Yeah, about the GFCs, does it make sense to lower them even though the studies prove that out? I mean, at some point we're going to have to raise them again, I assume.
I think either way, either scenario that the city might face I think there's a lot of merit to reducing them. If we see the growth that the plan is projecting, The numbers are telling us this will work. This will generate enough funding to make this utility solid.
Based on the projected growth.
If we don't see that growth, and it's a pretty modest growth projection we've built into here, but let's say that the economy continues to stagnate for this locality and we're having trouble generating new hookups, we might view that as an attraction. And if there's not a lot of hookups being paid for, we haven't lost a lot of money anyway. We're not talking about a big loss to the utility if you're only having 5 or 10 new hookups a year. But if 50, 60, 100 start coming in, the plan tells us that'll work, and I think it's a good measure for the city to take.
I guess I was just trying to correlate it between the increased sewer rates that we just had to do, which is mostly paying for the debt service on the wastewater treatment plant.
I think part of the analysis is those new customers will be paying those new rates, just like everybody else will, and this cost will kind of bring everybody in line, and that's the objective overall.
Right.
No, I think it's great that we can do that. I just want to make sure that it's the right thing.
Sure. Sounds counterintuitive, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember that they're really two separate things. The general facilities charges only go for building capacity, whereas the rates go for maintaining what you already have. So it's apples and oranges, really.
Yeah,
And
that analysis is trying to identify what this new customer should be charged to sort of buy into the system that's already in place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really have to commend you, Steve, for getting this to the finish line. It has been a long process. Seems like we've been working on it for a long time. But we've seen how much we have to pay for sewer facilities if we don't plan accordingly, and we really didn't have anything like this in place, and so we were faced with starting from scratch, basically. And now we have a way to maintain these facilities that we've spent a lot of money for, and I would hate to think that we had spent that money and not planned for maintenance and continued expansion of the plants and the pipes and things, so that we don't find ourselves in 20 years in the same position we were 20 years ago.
And it helps us to truly accommodate that growth that we, I think, are trying to accommodate in a real sense.
Right. And the underground stuff is really important. A lot of people forget about it, but it really is important to have those things in place, because if they're not there, what you see gets really bad. So it's good to have those in proper working order.
In this study here, this plan that you've come into, is the connecting of the satellite plant and the downtown sewage treatment plant, is that part of this? Because we just got some funding to help do that. So is that in here someplace? Did I miss that? Or?
We described the ability to provide that diverter, and I think it's built into the cost of the future improvements. But again, that was anticipated to be either grant money or developer funded, so it wasn't something that we had to, the city was going to have to pay for. But it certainly provides us some flexibility in staving off the need to expand the satellite plant, and that was one of the real dividends. If that area was required to be served by the satellite, it wouldn't take much development to trigger that second phase. But if we can divert flows to downtown while we're doing planning and gathering funding and getting new connections that are paying their share of that cost, I think the utility will be in a lot better shape, and that really is going to help us do that.
I do appreciate all your hard work that you did in putting this together for us. The other thing is what I hear when I do talk to residents, concerning on the sewer rate, the 20% increase. I know that I personally am kind of out there scratching all over the ground I can find, over by Olympia, to see if we can't get some help in funding aspects for this. How close do you think we are on actually getting a grant for that $3 million for Basin 3? Is there any progress in that area?
That's less of my world now than it was 6 months ago. I couldn't tell you. I'd hate to mislead you by telling you what I think. I know Greg and Mike.
Just make it look good, or just make us feel good,
There's been a fair amount of effort. In my opinion, I believe the city's well positioned to get a USDA grant for that work. And I think it's a negotiation that we need to initiate, but I think their past studies have demonstrated that our ratepayers can only afford so much, and so they would be contradicting themselves to say something different now.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Don't leave the room. Aren't you on the next? Put the book down. All right. Thank you. Steve, I think you're also going to talk to us about the abatement strategies next.
Commission. This is another element of our abatement strategy. Just as a form of background, when we decided to move through a process to have the parking manor abated, we went and ultimately secured a warrant of abatement through the court system. That process took well over a year. A fair amount of legal resources were expended, but we ultimately got the job done. What we identified, and I think mainly through our city attorney's assistance, was a more streamlined process to use the hearing examiner review to determine a building dangerous or unfit, and the hearing examiner setting guidelines to either have that abated or some other process could occur. It may not be demolition, but like you were saying, we need the building secured, cleaned up, or whatever the case may be. This is another tool in that ability to deal with these projects in a different way, and I think that all of these have different opportunities, and where there's an opportunity for a site to be redeveloped, particularly residential development, this might be a very good tool for us to have. In essence, what this proposal would do is set in place utilizing condemnation policies that are already, the state already allows you to enact to deal with blight. And my staff report defined blight pretty specifically, and that's an important part of this. You have to identify that you're doing something for the public good here, for public benefit, and it's clearly in the public benefit to deal with blight in your community. So this definition of blight is really the foothold that the commission would have if you wanted to take this step of condemnation to deal with a unfit or derelict building. I described briefly what that process would entail, that we would provide notice to an owner of our intent to condemn the site, that we, the city, would enact an ordinance. And so I think that's an important step for you to recognize, that before staff would actually have the ability to condemn a property, we would have to come back to the commission with an ordinance that specifically describes what our action is. This action would coincide with probably some sort of negotiation or discussion with the property owner. We wouldn't be doing this in secret. We'd be open about it. And I think our objective is to try to find some way to either abate the property or redevelop the site. And in these cases, I think this tool would be best when it's pretty clear that redevelopment seems to be, there's a lot of interest, or there's some reason to believe that redevelopment could happen right around the corner. What's described here is a process where we would, in turn, offer the property at fair market value to someone before the property is abated, or if the building needs to be demolished, with the understanding that the purchaser would complete that demolition in a certain period of time. Staff's recommendation was a 6 to 12 months, something along those lines, something that you're comfortable with. The benefit here is the city doesn't get in this place where we're expending our resources to abate the property and then have to possibly wait for years to recoup those costs. Our costs are almost immediately transferred when we pay the property owner fair market value for their property as part of the condemnation process. We in turn sell the property for fair market value to the new buyer, who then demolishes the building. Our legal costs would be increased, but I don't see that nearly reaching the cost of abatement, particularly for a larger building like some we've had in the past, like Park Manor. So I think this is a good tool for us to consider. And there's nothing in terms of an action I'm expecting tonight, but I thought it'd be an opportunity to discuss this a little bit if you had questions about how this would work. And I'd anticipate you'd want to see some policies or guidelines that we would follow if we were to take this on as an added tool to abate unwanted or unfit dwellings.
So do we not already have the ability to do this?
The state already gives us that ability, yes, but condemning property can be a real sensitive topic,
Right.
and I thought there might be some benefit in discussing specifically why the city would take such a seemingly be a drastic measure.
Okay.
But blight and lack of reinvestment in the community is a big concern, and it certainly seems like from a financial standpoint, it's a good way to quickly deal with a problem situation.
So it wouldn't necessarily be a change in what we're able to do, it would just be a decision to go ahead and utilize that tool that we haven't really done in the past, but...
Yeah, if the commission tells me tonight, yeah, we believe this has some value, we could move along with the policies that would allow us to proceed with that. And again, any action would come before the commission a couple times before something's completed.
And then just one more clarification, is it necessary to do a separate ordinance for every structure?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this, too many times it seems like some of these properties have questionable ownership or other people in lien positions where it makes it difficult on the city side, and I think this would clear that up a lot, maybe motivate financial institutions or absentee owners to, get a quicker, stronger notice that it needs to take action on it. So I think we should move along with this myself. I like it.
Faster is better, in my opinion, and, I think anybody that really has a sincere interest in keeping their property, basically kept up and is a benefit to the city, but if you have some of the stuff that's open and whatnot, I think I would be very much in favor of doing this, that you deal with an owner, and if you give them a certain amount of time, if they're not going to keep a place boarded up, or if it's beyond repair, I think we need to start cleaning the city up. So I am in favor of, if this all meets the legal muster,
Sure.
This been run by our city attorney, kind of like, or as far as doing this, but there's no legal problem here. Really, this is...
None whatsoever. As I stated, blight is specifically defined here as part of the RCW, and in essence, if the property has been vacated and just abandoned, if because of this activity that's going on, the community feels threatened. If there's a lot of people coming and going, maybe some illegal activities occurring, or if there's drug activity occurring, those are all indicators that you have a situation this would be a proper tool to utilize.
Another advantage to me, it seems, on this is that the city could potentially have less cost as far as we wouldn't even have to do the abatement potentially if we could line up an owner beforehand.
And I think that would be at least staff's vision of how we would move forward with this particular tool, is if we felt or were positive that someone is interested in the property and maybe they can't negotiate with the property owner or something's going on, but if the city was able to intervene and cross that threshold for them, that we could have redevelopment occur.
It appears we may have a consensus to move forward on this. You said no action at this time and whatnot, but I think we want to clean things up as fast as possible, so I would imagine that we would want to move forward on this.
Well,
unless the city administrator has are you comfortable with this?
I think there's some questions yet to be answered, but I think if the commissioners want us to go to the next level, yeah. I think none of us have done it before, but there's a lot of elements of it that look very positive, and so I just soon keep going and maybe get some more legal help and start filling in some of the details and then start doing it.
Sooner.
very well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right. Administration report.
pulling together the details and doing the work for the Poverty Task Force that we authorized last week. So far, that's on schedule for a formation next week. If there's any glitches, and there could be, then we can always postpone a week, but I'll keep you informed as to that. The only other thing of real note is tomorrow I'm going to be out of the office. I'm attending a session on performance measures down at the University of Washington. So I'll be back in the late afternoon, but I'll be gone in the morning and early afternoon. So for that
All right.
session.
And the deadline on the task force, if you wanted to be on it, we need the applications by tomorrow.
Tomorrow is it. Tomorrow at 5 o'clock, we're going to take the applications and make some choices, and then bring the slate to you along with, I've got a charter under development that pretty much matches up with the report that I had last week, basically using the model that we created for the infrastructure task force and then modifying it to suit this. And so, yeah,
All right.
it's all on track so far.
Very good. There is an opportunity for general public comment. If anyone else would like to speak, now would be the opportunity. Seeing none, coming forward, administration final touches.
Link on the purple sheet, Your Honor.
Absolutely. All right, our next meeting will be July 22nd, 2013 at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.